Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on The Flash Season 9. This is going to be my review for episode 12 for this season, the second last ever episode, I think I worded that correctly, for The Flash and Season 9, otherwise entitled A New World Part 3 with... We've had these subtitles this season, and this one is just called The Changes, I'm pretty sure it was called. But of course, spoiler, if you've not watched the episode, go away, because especially towards the end of this episode and some other parts throughout the episode, big spoilers and reveals. So yeah, go away if you've not watched the episode. But if you have watched the episode, you are continuing on, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below your various thoughts about the episode, everything like that. Always curious to read what you guys are thinking about the episode, and also what's coming next week in this series finale. Let me know down there. And yeah, if you're going to enjoy the video, enjoy the episode, everything like that, drop a like on the video to show your support and what you like. But of course, last episode had Malcolm Gilmore being revealed to be Eddie Thawne, reborn in the future as he gets like flash memories, I guess you could say, to his time before dying, specifically around Iris. Now, the crystal messes with Team Flash back in the present day via Chillblain, with Iris actually going into labor throughout it all. So there's a lot of crazy stuff that happened in like a 5-minute period last episode, with Barry actually showing up again after his adventures in episode 10, only to disappear and zap away soon after. But the big question is, where did he go? Well, we find out. Now, overall, this episode, it had some really good parts, stuff that I was really invested in. I was like, man, this is really good. But stuff I've been waiting, like in some cases, like since like end of season 1, season 2 stuff, like been waiting that long to get it in this episode. But then there was some stuff that was absolutely arse, and I'm like, what happened there? Why was that in this episode? And I have to address it. I'm not going to just skim over it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and whine about it. When we get to it, we'll get to it, but I'm not going to lie. There was some stuff that dragging down is one word to put it. Drowning is probably maybe the better word to put it. I felt like I was drowning in those scenes, gasping for air, and I'll bring them up when necessary, but I also don't want to be, just whine about it, because at the end of the day, the episode's done. We can move forward into the series finale. So yeah, but I'll bring it up when necessary. But yeah, I know it was there, so don't say I'm avoiding it. Now, we do start this episode off with the latest moments of last episode, or the later moments of last episode, might I say, with Eddie revealing he is, well, Eddie, after proving it to Captain Cobalt. Now, Eddie wants to seek out the Flash because he's, was seeing the Flash in those, Flash memories he was getting. Though Captain Cobalt wants to get Eddie checked out to make sure that he is truly who he says he is, but this is sort of getting in the way of what the crystal wants Eddie to do. So Cobalt is actually sucked into a singularity looking thing and, gone. So she can't interfere with what Eddie's doing going forward. So I guess the first one bites the dust. Now, we do actually have the Speed Force, like the, Nora Allen looking Speed Force, showing up again in Star Labs and revealing to the team that the negative Speed Force is the one that's sort of shrouding Barry in its energy. So it's sort of like unable to really detect where Barry is, but it's also sending Barry to the future, or at least Barry's on his way to the future, and all of the Speed Force that is left is actually within Barry, which is pretty crazy. So if Barry is killed, or they can't really deal with him and he's erased, so is this timeline as a whole. So yeah, finding Barry and securing him is of the most importance. Now, I think this is a good way to sort of make it very, because it's always forgotten, I must say, that Barry is the birth of the Speed Force. People just think that the Speed Force gave Barry's powers. Barry getting his speed ignited the Speed Force. So I think sort of making that the central part is pretty important, because I think they didn't really do that back in was it end of season 6, season 7? They sort of skimmed over that. So yeah, it's probably a good thing that they sort of brought that back home. Now, we do actually go to the future in this episode in more ways than one. We're not just there with Eddie, but we're actually going to other places there. So in the year 2049, we go to, I guess it's Star Labs. It's like Team Flash is based. And we have Cecile and Allegra and Chester, and they all look the goddamn same. They all look the goddamn same. I was like, come on, sure. The only one that looked older in this episode, who we meet later, is actually Iris, because they actually put like gray streaks in her hair like we've seen previously, and I think they added some a different type of makeup. They didn't give her wrinkles, but they gave her I don't know, her skin looked a bit different. But then again, it might have been the lighting of the episode, so it's hard to tell. But Iris was the only one that looked like some sort of age older. Chester looks 100% the same. Maybe Allegra had the same sort of skin makeup going on that Iris had, and Cecile looks exactly the same. This is 26 years in the future. I don't know. I'd like to look, like I do now, 26 years from now. I can put a bet on that I won't. So yeah, very odd. Maybe there's some future cream or something they put on their face. I'm not too sure, but they looked exactly the goddamn same. But they are there with Nora, aka Excess, and we see that the Chronarch has been taken down recently. And we also learn that the Flash Museum just sits on top of Star Labs, or where Team Flash's base is. So they're there where all the flashy stuff happens, and then the Flash Museum is above them, which I guess it's not a bad idea, but at the same time, I mean, someone might take a wrong door or go to the wrong floor on the elevator, and all of a sudden they're in Team Flash's base. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it makes sense and it sort of works. But yeah, just I didn't realize that was the case. I think this might be the first time that's actually revealed. But then again, I think this is the first time we've actually been to where Team Flash operates out of in the future. All the other times it's been like the apartment or just the Flash Museum itself. But speaking of the Flash Museum, Eddie is there. Eddie goes to the Flash Museum where he learns about what has happened since his death, including the big part that Reverse Flash came back despite his death more than once. And he sort of yells this out in the middle of the museum with the other people in attendance sort of getting concerned. But this is when we get an alternate Nora showing up, which blew my mind. I was like, hold on, is this actually real? But no, it's actually, obviously it's the daughter that would have been there, I guess, like hypothetically, if Eddie and Iris stayed, got married, had children and stuff like that. But it's obviously the crystal trying to lure in Eddie into, his life that could have been. But the proper Nora does snap Eddie out of this temptation by zooming in and getting him out. But she actually recognizes Eddie. So that's a big step forward in this storyline. Now, Eddie does get taken into Star Labs where they confirm that he is Eddie through like DNA and all that stuff. But he actually recognizes Nora once she takes off her mask from the episode last season when Bart and Nora traveled back to 2013, which I actually think was a very smart thing because it's very important to remember, sure, that's like 30 odd years ago. But for Eddie, he died in 2015. He only died like a year and a half after that moment. So if he's, back, if his memories are like just after he died, it makes sense he would recognize Nora because to him, it's only like a year and a half, 2 years, from that point. But through these conversations, Eddie starts to really second guess his choice to sacrifice himself, with just what's happened and, Reverse Flash still coming back. Like, was it worth it? Like, what was it worth it? And Nora does push, well, hold on, all these people would have died if it wasn't for you, or specifically Barry wouldn't have died. But it's just like, yeah, but what about me? What about me? Like, Reverse Flash came back anyway. I did it, so this didn't happen. So Eddie's just second guessing himself at multiple points throughout this episode, whether what he did was right and whether it was actually worth it. Now, we do get Nora in the Time Vault actually sending a message to Barry in 2049, but he's actually on the Justice League Watchtower and won't receive the message after he returns from the dark side of the moon within the Watchtower, which does seem very inconvenient that you couldn't get a message for a certain amount of times. But because it's like, on the dark side of the moon, it sounds like it's the version of the Watchtower that was actually on the moon, which is in the comics. It's in like the Justice League of America comics. There's actually a moon, like a base Watchtower, not the one that floats like a satellite, but actually on the actual moon. So it sounds like it could be that. It doesn't really go more than that, but that's a cool little Easter egg there. But this is when the blue crystal actually appears to Nora with the whole voice and everything. Nora picks it up and is now controlled. So now we have the vessel that the crystal, or the negative speed force crystal, will be using throughout this episode. And well, it's probably more convenient than Chillblaine or Joe because this one has powers. Now, we did get Eddie in Star Labs looking over sort of Iris's history and what happened since he died, her marriage to Barry, the family, and onwards. And the crystal-controlled Nora does appear to Eddie and really starts to push him on, egg him on towards giving himself into the singularities by trying to get him emotional. And I think she does a really good job. I mean, Nora plays a really good, like, sadistic, just sort of like messing with someone in a very like just almost like the devil on the shoulder almost. I thought those were really funny scenes, or fun scenes with Nora and Eddie. But this is where we get to some of the stuff that, when I used the term drowning or dragging before, this is what I'm talking about. So back in the present day, Team Flash gets Cecile to propel herself into her future self's body, where she learns more about her future self, including the fact, and this is where it is, I'm fine with Cecile propelling herself into the future. It's a power, everything like that. But they get into this sub-story in the episode that is so unnecessary that did anyone care about it? I really actually need someone to let me know in the comment section, did you care about this sub-story alongside it? So to clarify, I'm fine with Cecile propelling her powers into the future. It just seems like a logical power set of like the, telepathy and telekinetic stuff that would happen. But it's a sub-story where she hardly sees her family apparently now due to being swept up and being a part of Team Flash. and this spooks her and sends her back to the present day. Now, I'm assuming this gets followed up in the series finale in some way because it's not really addressed here, but it still happens. So is she going to change the timeline where she doesn't stay and keep being a hero? If that's the case, then maybe fair enough. But there's this scene, which I didn't even write in my notes, but I got to mention now, there's a scene with her and Chester, which did anyone find it interesting? I was like, come on, let's go. Let's go back to Barry and Eddie, or Nora and Eddie. Let's go back there. That's cool. That's interesting. Or longer scenes with Eddie and Iris. Like there's the scene between them that's, you know, it's good, but it was also not there. Like you thought Eddie might have been around Iris more. We could have got like an extra couple of minutes or another scene or two with them, or split it between. That drowned the episode out and ruined the momentum, in my opinion. Like, because it just bogs you down. You're like, I don't want to be here. Let's go. Continue. So but I have to wonder, we know that Grant got COVID. So I'm wondering, does that scene was that scene even meant to be there? Is that like a manufactured subplot to fill in screen time because Grant got COVID and couldn't do it? I'm going to assume the answer is yes to that, because I like to have good faith, because pretty much the majority of the rest of the episode I really, really liked. Like pretty much I'd give it 8 or 9 out of 10, probably 9 out of 10 the rest of the episode in regards to storytelling and pushing the story forward. But this really bogged it down. I was like, come on, like seriously? But anyway, back to some good stuff. So Crystal Nora almost gets through to Eddie whilst in Mercury Labs. They go back there because, of course, that's where Eddie got struck with the negative speed force. And, you know, she's just tempting him with a life that he could have always had. But he's actually able to resist at that point, with Barry appearing in front of Nora just after Eddie leaves. But Nora takes him out. Now, Barry is faced with a very similar situation like we saw back in episode 10 with Joe, with, you know, potentially killing his daughter to get away or just being killed himself. But Eddie shows up again, allowing him to get away. And this is where we actually are allowed to see Barry and Eddie reconnect. And Barry sort of hoping that Eddie can assist him in sort of like, you know, just stopping what the crystal is doing and, you know, what it's trying to achieve. Now, they're actually in Eddie or Malcolm Gilmore's house, and Betty, I'm not talking about Riverdale, God, Barry figures out the entire existence of Malcolm is due to the negative speed force. Like, their house is just covered in negative tachyons, and like we saw last episode with the driver's license with all the blue negative tachyons that are changing things, and like even like the photo is like Joe. So I guess it's taking like what Joe's house looked like and then just putting it in the future, but then making it look like Malcolm has lived a life there. So pretty crazy. But just the entire, like Barry just figures out the entire existence of Malcolm is due to the negative speed force, you know, what is within the crystal. And it brought Eddie back to life in order to, you know, potentially be its avatar. Like that's what Barry is thinking. And unfortunately for Barry, he is a bit too late in intercepting Eddie and the influence of the negative speed force, at least in regards to there being some sort of influence on Eddie. Like it has shown him a bit too much of the positive side, I guess, of what the negative speed force has done. So a bit of the positive of the negative. And Eddie is really buying into the thought that Barry did steal his life, his future, and Barry tries his best, but you just don't think it's going to work. It feels like enough damage has been done from, you know, before Barry got there, because it's hard to deny that there is actually a bit of truth to it all. Sure, the newspaper said Iris West Allen, but how do we know that the future wasn't potentially playing into the fact that Eddie might kill himself? So who knows? Who knows if that was actually a potential future? You never know. You know, things can stem off and everything. So maybe Eddie was destined to that, or even just Eddie was destined to do something else. You know, Eddie wasn't destined to be a nobody like Earbard said. You just wouldn't know, would you? Now, the crystal-controlled Nora demands for Barry to bring her Eddie, but Barry actually goes to face her on his own. And we do get a really cool speedster fight. It was almost like very Zoom because of the blue lightning. We had the blue lightning from the crystal controlled Nora, so that was really cool. Bit of a teaser for the finale because we know Zoom's coming back. But Barry tries to get through to Nora, but there's just really no luck there. He's really not having no forward movement at all with that. And at the same time, Eddie actually goes to see future Iris, and things start well with their reunion, but then things start to turn a bit weird with Eddie pushing Iris to make things like sort of how he wants them to be a family. But Iris stands off. Now, Nora is freed of the crystal elsewhere by the future, like, overpowered Cecile, who is named Virtue. We talked about this in videos. Like, Virtue is a character in the comics, but it's not Cecile. So they've taken another a character that's called Virtue from DC Comics, and they've made Cecile Virtue. Though Cecile Horton also exists in the comics, so it's a bit weird. But of course, present day Cecile is in control of this future version, so she knows what's coming in her future now, I guess. Now, we did get a scene with Barry talking to future Iris, sort of like securing his concerns, I guess you could say, or like calming his concerns about stuff going forward. So at least he knows that, you know, I guess nothing wrong is happening, at least in regards to current timeline changes, which I guess makes Barry a bit more confident. I guess the question is, I know a lot of people will be frustrated with is, okay, we've seen future Iris so many times, are we ever going to see future Barry? But my whole viewpoint on it most of the time is that when we're with Barry, it's usually his present day version for the most part. The only like outside time is that episode back in was it season 3 towards the end where we went to like 2023, 2024 or something like that. Sort of like where we are now, we had the future Barry there. So just little changes there, but for the most part, we're with our present day Barry. So maybe in the series finale, we meet the 2049 Barry. Maybe that could be a cool little fun thing there, but who knows if that will happen. But the end scene of the episode really does set up the finale. I feel like I sort of would have wanted a bit more to this end scene, but at the end of the day, I'm sort of fine with it because at least it sort of sets up a pretty crazy finale, or hopefully a crazy finale in my opinion. And that is when we have Iris's rejection sort of pushing Eddie over the edge, and he's sort of just desperate for what he feels he was destined for, completely opening himself to the crystal and its power, without actually seeing like Savitar, Zoom, Godspeed, and Reverse Flash within the crystal, and just sort of like, they're talking about like the Flash's legacy and stuff, and he does accept the invitations to the singularity. Now, we don't see him go inside the singularity, it just opens up for him, and you can tell that he's pretty happy, or like, at least willing to go in. Now, we know that Cobalt Blue gets a suit. That's sort of disappointed we didn't get that at the end of this episode. I thought we were. I thought when he like was going to accept the crystal, the suit was going to form on him or something like that. So they've done pretty much all the story. That was the big thing I wanted for this episode, was just sort of wrap up the review here, but I'll get to the later parts here. But that was what I wanted in this episode, was them to pretty much set up all the story that they needed, so we know where Eddie is and what he's going to do. So we know what he's going to do next episode. Attack the Flash's legacy. The crystal sets it up. So it achieved what I wanted to do there, though I would have preferred if there was maybe a tiny bit more setup. But I did get a look at the trailer, and it seems like it's just going to be chaos going on, at least in the first half of next week's episode, or next week's finale. So I think it did the setup it needed. However, I do feel there was time wasted in this episode. Now, I don't want to bash on it too much because I don't know the logistics around it. Did Grant have COVID during this episode, and were there meant to be more scenes with him, or was this planned? Because there were just the parts with Cecile and some other parts with Team Flash, which I don't think anyone watching really would have cared for. So I think there's maybe like 5, I don't think it'd be up to 10, but at least 5 to 8 minutes of screen time sort of wasted. So, you know, in your second last ever episode for the show, you think you'd make your minutes worth it. And I feel like they wasted some time here, especially with stuff that, as I said, it felt like I was drowning in them, like, and not in a good way. So yeah, that's the negatives for the episode, but I think the positives outweigh the negatives. It was just that it would be frustrating in those scenes when you're watching them. But I think it did all the storytelling stuff it needed to, leading into next week's finale, where they can pretty much just do fun action, you know, fan service stuff for the most part. And the only real story side they have to deal with is wrapping up the Cobalt Blue thing. But I think if the crystal gets destroyed, I think that just undoes anything there. So I don't even know that it has to be that big of a proper wrap up for that Cobalt Blue thing. Because just the way the crystal operates, it seems like if they disconnect it and destroy it, then that just undoes everything. So at least from what I'm thinking, at least from like me from the outside looking in. So yeah, but you know, it sets up Savitar, Zoom, and all the other speedsters coming back. So can't wait to see that. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Obviously, next week's the series finale. We will have my trailer breakdown tomorrow, and I'll also be live on Twitch tomorrow. So if you don't follow me yet, you can click the link in the description down below, but I'll probably notify you guys on YouTube when I'm live over there. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions about this episode. What you love, what you hate, any thoughts and predictions and theories moving into next week's series finale. Let me know your opinions down there. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.